obviously if you go searching about the Katyn massacre, so-called, on the internet, there's lots and lots of different figures sort of bandied about. I mean, the kind of figure that a lot of people are sort of going towards is something like 15,000. But as far as I can tell, only about 5,000 bodies were actually found at Katyn. So there is this problem about the missing 10,000. And some of the historians actually say, well, there was 2 other camps, because there were 3 camps actually referred to in this. I think it's mentioned in one of these letters about the Shelloping, was it, reported it to Khrushchev or something, in this secret memo in 1959 or something, that they talk about 3 camps. I think it's quoted in this letter in the Morning Star by Michael Wagstaff. And
I wonder if he's related to Stephen Wagstaff, who writes on bourgeois papers, this kind of rubbish.
It's obviously,
or is himself just calling him Michael.
something that has been seized upon, the fact that 3 camps were mentioned. But they've always got this problem that if they're accusing the Soviet NKVD of executing 15,000 officers, where are the other 10,000? Because, like I said, they only seem to be able to show that there were 5,000 or so. I think they've come up with an exact figure, like something like 5,245.
And a half.
No, and 1 woman. You know, they actually named a woman at one point, but they actually say that, well, if there are these missing 10,000 bodies, why weren't they exposed at the same time as the Katyn ones? They must have been under areas of German occupation. They could easily have exposed these other 2 sides, but they never did. They never were. And therefore the whole thing sounds completely out of it just doesn't match. It just doesn't fit the facts, the explanation that they're coming up with. And for sort of people to be repeating it in the pages of the Morning Star, I think is quite deplorable. But on the other hand, undoubtedly, some of the Polish officers were shot for various crimes that were carried out, as you get in any prison camp, like theft or murder or sort of male rape or whatever. These were crimes that were being carried out, and it appears as if there were something like 1,800 sentences of death actually given out. Now, 1,800 death sentences is nowhere near the 15,000 deaths that they claim. I mean, Wojciech's, the filmmaker's concern over this was that his own father was shot, supposedly at Katyn. Well, as far as the records show, his father was shot in Kharkov prison, which means that he was already being condemned to execution as a criminal who had committed a crime in the camps, as far as we can see. Now, we know surely from Soviet experience that the passing of a death sentence doesn't always mean that it was carried out. I think this is quite clear from the records about the purges, but many of those 1,800 death sentences probably weren't carried out. So the actual number of Polish officers that were actually killed by the NKVD is probably far less than 1,800. But to actually then sort of come back with this crime of 15,000 or 10,000, as you said originally, without any other evidence other than the bodies that were found at Katyn, nearly all of which were executed with German bullets, then it's to base a whole story on the basis of such flimsy evidence is really unhistorical. And at least now, I think, even on the Wikipedia website, if you get onto there, if you look at the Katyn massacre on the Wikipedia website, they have started to refer to the fact that there is all this conflicting and contradictory evidence around, and therefore it cannot simply be taken at face value. What surprises me, though, about Wojciech, the film director, is that he's got a whole history of making anti-communist films going all the way back to sort of Ashes and Diamonds and Canal and during the 1950s. I cannot understand that if his father really was a Polish officer executed by the NKVD, why the post-war Polish government allowed him to make films if he was such a sort of child of a reactionary, so to speak. And yet he did start out by making a certain number of supposedly pro-socialist films like Man of Marble or whatever, and about the reconstruction of Poland after the war. But he soon went off the rails after 1956 in Poland. And it's symptomatic that they've dragged him out of semi-retirement now to put his name to this film, when in fact he's probably too old to be really in charge of anything. But, you know, where's this coming from and why? And why now? Because Poland has been the site recently of one of the most reactionary governments in Europe, who've even put priests in jail for disagreeing with the policies of the government, who've had a witch hunt against virtually the whole civil service, who've driven out thousands and thousands of teachers from Polish schools simply because they were appointed by the previous communist, as they called it, government. And this most reactionary right-wing government has obviously been at the bottom of pushing a film like this to come out, not just for international sort of circulation, but to try and convince the people of Poland themselves that an anti-Soviet position is justifiable because they want to put those bases, those American bases, in Poland as well as in the Czech Republic. They don't want the kind of opposition to those bases in Poland that the Czech Communist Party has organised, the Communist Party in Bohemia and Moravia has organised in the Czech Republic. They don't want that kind of opposition in Poland. So their support for this film, release of this film at this time, I think has got some definite internal Polish justification, not just the sort of the reason why they want it to.
The comrade is absolutely right. They have hounded out so many people from the civil service and various other parts of the government establishment. Polish embassies these days are notoriously understaffed. They can't find enough number of people to be in charge of Polish embassies in different countries, because anybody who is capable of doing the job obviously was appointed in the previous era. So anybody who was appointed under the old socialist regime, they don't want to appoint. They're hounding them. And this actually has snowballed. That's why Kuczynski's government was lost to apparently slightly more liberal government of Donald Tusk, who is the difference between Tusk and Kuczynski brothers is between Hitler and Himmler, or Goebbels or something. Obviously there are individual differences in any shade of ideology.